Ukraine is about to lose Kostiantynivka. This is the map that Deep State is showing you, and this is the reality on the ground. What a disaster! Not only is the fortress city encircled on 3 sides, but Russian storm detachments broke through in all directions and now took over a large part of the citadel.
All hope is failing, my lord!
Radio Svoboda reported the dam is at the stage of cracks. As we speak, Russian storm detachments are mopping up the city block by block. It seems Ukrainian drone swarms could not stop the horde. Now, contrary to other sectors on the front, in Kostiantynivka it's the Russians that benefit from drone supremacy. Ukrainian supply lines are constantly harassed by Russian fiber optics drones.
The next one is right on top of us.
There it is. There it is.
And the city keeps getting bombarded with heavy loads every day. We can say that the AFU is getting bunny blued. And as a result, all the Ukrainian troops in the south of Kostiantynivka could find themselves encircled if they don't fall back immediately. Most news outlets were quick to say that Russia's spring offensive was a flop. That's because they turned a blind eye to the most important sectors of the entire front. If Kostiantynivka falls, Russian forces will be able to prepare for the final offensive against Ukraine's crown jewels of Slavyansk and Kramatorsk. So in this video, we will analyze this entire battle of Kostiantynivka step by step, so that you understand everything that happened. And of course, so that we can try to predict what will happen next. If only our beloved Ukrainskaya Armia could find a way to replenish its energy. It's a perfect time to mention today's sponsor, Black Forest Supplements. By now you know how much I love cocoa powder. I keep ordering it, but today I want to tell you about NMN. You know, we can all agree that Joe Rogan is a beast of a man, both physically and mentally. And one of the supplements he mentioned taking was NMN. Now, rather than me trying to explain it, I'm gonna let the doctor that discovered it explain it when he went on the Joe Rogan podcast. But there's more to it and I'll tell you after.
What is NMN? Good question. So let me take a quick step back. Sure. So about 20 years ago, Lenny Guarente and a team of us at MIT discovered a set of genes that controls aging in yeast cells, just brewer's yeast, what you find in beer and bread. And those genes are called sirtuins, and there are 7 of them in our bodies, 5 in yeast. And what they do is they protect all organisms on the planet, plants, bacteria, humans, from deterioration and disease. They're like the Pentagon. They sense when we're hungry, sense when we're exercising, and they send out the troops to defend us. So when you put more of these genes into a yeast cell or a mouse, they'll live longer, between 5 to 20% longer. And so we think that these genes are responsible for the effects of dieting and exercise, which is great. What that means is we can now mimic that with molecules. So NMN is one of those molecules, so is resveratrol.
So NMN is going to kick off what is called your NAD+, and it will fire you up with improved energy, weight management, endurance, strength, anti-aging benefits. If you're starting to see wrinkles, that's for you. Long story short, people that take it say they have more energy and they feel stronger, and it's important for men like us. And the other supplement that you're going to hear a lot mentioned as well is something called resveratrol. It possesses high antioxidant potential. NMN and resveratrol go hand in hand. And of course, Black Forest has both. There's also my personal favorite, cocoa powder. Look, I know it's a lot, but Black Forest is offering 50% off on the entire store. So check out Black Forest supplements. Links are down below and I think you'll be pleasantly surprised. This was the frontline situation in Kostiantynivka where we last left off at the end of March. If Ukrainian forces maintained control of the urban area of the fortress city, Russia's 3rd and 8th Combined Arms Armies were putting pressure on both flanks to take the city into a pincer. In turn for Ukraine, the defense of the fortress city of Kostiantynivka depended on the control of the settlements of Stepanivka, Ivanivka, and Novabalka in the west, as well as Novodmitrivka and Molocharka in the east. You have to understand that if these bastions fell to the enemy, then it's GG well played. On the 29th of March, the Ukrainian 109th Territorial Defense Brigade launched numerous drone strikes against Russian forces in the Stepanivka sector west of Kostiantynivka. This direction was very strategic because if the Russian 8th Army captured Stepanivka, it could push north and close off the encirclement of Kostiantynivka. 2 days later, both sides shelled each other. Ukrainian artillery concentrated its fires on Ivanivka. But the Dnipro 1 Fire Support Regiment also targeted this sector south of the city with greenhouses, adjacent to Ivanivka. That's because the Russian command was trying to infiltrate into the citadel, the city's high-rise district. Meanwhile, Russian artillery bombarded the entirety of Kostiantynivka. But notice the three settlements that were targeted to the west: Ivanivka, Novobalka, and Mykolaipilia. All the pieces were positioned for the next round of the big battle of Kostiantynivka. On April 1st, a Russian sabotage team was targeted right at the center of Kostiantynivka, not far from the Svinets metallurgic factory.
What are you doing here?
It was such a shock that even pro-Ukrainian accounts reported, "Unfortunately, this isn't an April Fool's joke." Indeed, this was geolocated 2,500 meters beyond the contact line. Russian presence in this sector was even more surprising since this sector here was still under Ukrainian control, as attested by Russian drone strikes. Really, how did they get there? Meanwhile, we can also see that Russian Molniya 2 drones targeted the greenhouses where Russian soldiers were spotted just 2 days before. This industrial area was clearly contested. The Ukrainian command of the garrison immediately sent reinforcements to reclaim this area, because if nothing was done, from there the Russians could use the infrastructure as staging ground to turn Kostiantynivka from the west. If for many months the Ukrainian garrison managed to hold the urban area of Kostiantynivka under control, within a couple days the first cracks were showing. The next day, Russian drones spotted Ukrainian infantrymen in the woods east of Bereztok, and the position was then bombarded by D-20 howitzers. On the 3rd of April, Russian drones then mopped up this tree line west of Bereztok. You can see the first strike hit a dugout with a Vandal fiber optics drone. The Russian recon drone records the explosion from above, with 2 Ukrainian soldiers running out of the entrenchment, but then they're immediately targeted by more drones. On the 5th of April, the Ukrainians struck an agricultural warehouse in Bereztok, confirming Russian presence. So we can see a lot of fighting was taking place for this little hamlet. And as a reminder, Russian forces were already present in the settlement since the 2nd of March. That same day, drone pilots of the FSB spotted an enemy team picking up one of their Baba Yaga bombers in Ivanivka. This is relatively rare, so it's like hitting the jackpot. Finding and targeting these enemy drone teams will be the prerequisite in the coming weeks and months for any offensive operations, as it will prevent having swarms of FPV drones fall on attacking forces. The same FSB UAV team then detected the Ukrainian DRG inside Kostiantynivka. The riflemen barely advanced 150 meters that they were already targeted by enemy FPV drones. 1 kilometer from there, there's this large high-rise district, the Citadel, composed of 50 Soviet-era apartment blocks. That's when Russian aviation brought down one of these Khrushchevkas down with an FAB-3000. And then they destroyed another one. Since Moscow built it, Moscow has right to destroy it. On the 11th of April, the Russian 8th Army stormed Stepanivka. Dozens of Russian infantry teams approached from all directions. In response, the Ukrainian 109th Territorial Defense Brigade had no other choice but to unleash the bees.
Fire all the drones now!
Despite all the footage released by the 109th, that is 25 FPV drone strikes and munitions drops, I could only visually confirm 5 Russian fatalities and 2 wounded. The rest is all editing tricks and make-believe. The reality is that the Ukrainian drones just intervened too late. During the surprise attack, a 2-man Russian binôme ended up beyond Stepanivka, and another group managed to infiltrate all the way into Novobalka. At the same time, Russian riflemen were taking control of this tree line east of Stepanivka. Simultaneously, the Russian 103rd Motorized Rifle Regiment also launched numerous drone strikes against Ukrainian infantry positioned in Ivanivka. 24 hours later, Russian aviation played another round of Jenga in the high-rise district. If heat was increasing in the western sectors, then the Ukrainian garrison immediately had to turn to the east, because that's where the Ukrainian 36th Marine Brigade detected Russian infiltrations. All of them started from these woods, and somehow Russian soldiers kept respawning there. And it's no surprise that with spring and all the greenery blooming, that these woods will become very strategic for the Battle of Kostiantynivka, as the canopy will prevent Russian soldiers from being detected by Ukrainian drones. By the 14th of April, Russian forces controlled many houses in Bereztok, while Ukrainian soldiers were still holding dugouts in the woods around it. That's why the Russian 1465th Motorized Rifle Regiment dispatched many drones to clear out this sector. The next day, the command post of the Ukrainian 2nd Battalion, 156th Mechanized Brigade, guided drone strikes on buildings occupied by enemy patrols. These guys were happy, they were getting free XP on 4K. The only problem is that these buildings were located in Ivanivka. Ukrainian defenses west of Kostiantynivka were starting to give in. How Russian storm detachments got there is most likely by infiltrating this 2-kilometer-long balka, this sort of wooden ravine leading straight into the settlement. On the 17th, Ukrainian bomber drones targeted Russian dugouts 1,000 meters north of Bereztok, as well as along this tree line. Once again, how did they get there? I think the Russian command leapfrogged the riflemen for 3 kilometers from these woods, and then along the succession of tree lines. And from there, they started infiltrating into the south of Kostiantynivka. But these infiltration tactics take time, because if you send too many soldiers at once, they're gonna get detected and destroyed by enemy drones. So you have no other choice but to send 1, 2, 3 soldiers max at a time. That same day, Russian artillery batteries launched a heavy bombardment of the entire city, but mostly targeted the area north of the bus station, the sector north of Hospital Number 2, and here the entire eastern edge of town near the settlement of Novodmitrivka. Surprise, surprise, right after this artillery barrage, Russian storm detachments suddenly gained a foothold in Novodmitrivka. But their progression was stopped by Ukrainian drone operators of the Angry Birds Company. Ukrainian soldiers went from units named 4th Guards Katmirovskaya Order of Lenin Red Banner Tank Division named after Yuri Andropov to Angry Birds Company. Yeah, that's what happens when gamers take over warfare. What's next? Anyway, these drone operators sent the flock after enemy forces, including a lone Russian soldier hiding under some rubble. I can't show you the rest of the footage because it's just too macabre. Sometimes, I try to lighten the mood, but one of the Russian soldiers had his back against a tree trunk and he had lost both his legs. And he was gone. He was gone. Yet drone pilots kept hitting him over and over. You know why? Just so that they could earn more points.
Madness.
From a tactical perspective, urban areas are where drones are the least effective. There are so many buildings that the Russian infantrymen can easily find cover and accumulate forces and supplies. So once Russian soldiers gain a foothold in a major city, the writing is on the wall, it's the beginning of the end. Now the fortress city of Kostiantynivka is mainly defended by the Lyud Police Brigade. They have a very interesting story, maybe one day I'll do a video about it. But that's when one of their subunits, the 1st Assault Regiment Safari, tested a new way to prepare its assault teams for upcoming operations. Step 1. Receive the combat mission. We see officers in front of a big screen with satellite maps. At first, I was a bit confused because this is not Kostiantynivka. I immediately recognized it. It's Tarietsk. Yeah, I know. It's definitely a skill I can add to my resume after the war is over. Step 2. Recon drones are sent forward to scout. And they have this very nice software. That's where the magic happens. The drones took HD pictures of the area and the software recreated it to the centimeter in 3D. But it gets even better. The soldiers that will be sent to clear that building are practicing the mission with VR headsets. Now it's time for the execution of the operation. We see an assault team of 4 men progress from one building to another through rubble until they reach the assigned house to mop up. Pretty insane, right? Why is nobody talking about the gamerification of the Ukraine war? Rooms full of screens, controllers, XP, VR headsets, 3D models, and now 4v4 team deathmatch. Now get ready. This building they cleared was located right next to this Vignettes metallurgic factory, exactly where Russian riflemen had been spotted on the 1st of April. It's also not a coincidence that the two buildings are only 40 meters apart. So my guess is that this Ukrainian assault team from the 1st Regiment Safari was sent to mop up the area from Russian DRGs, and I would say around the 2nd or the 3rd of April. On the 25th of April, Ukrainian drones bombed a high-rise building. You heard that right. Ukrainian drones bombed a high-rise building, namely this multi-level apartment block right here. What a disaster!
What are you doing here?
That's how the Ukraine command must react every other day. The only explanation is that they left their greenhouses and then bounded from building to building for 1,500 meters. This means there are dozens of Russian rifle teams in this entire district. But that also means that Ivanivka is now essentially surrounded on three sides. And remember the Ukrainian rifle team that was spotted and then targeted 150 meters down the road? Well, in that same sector, north of the high-rise district, the Russian 78th Motor Rifle Regiment Siver Ahmad, together with the 4th Guards Motor Rifle Brigade, detected an important concentration of enemy infantry. They found the Ukrainian spawn spot!
A devastating loss for the enemy!
That same day, the Ukrainian 109th Territorial Defense Brigade launched drone strikes on Stepanivka, thus confirming the loss of the settlement. Once again, out of 24 FPV drone strikes or munitions drop, I could confirm 5 hits on Russian soldiers. One of them was wearing a thermal camouflage cloak. I would actually be interested to know how many soldiers managed to evade Ukrainian detection with such gear. At the same time, if they work so well, why even bother to send out riflemen in plain daylight? It could be as simple as because at night the soldiers don't see anything. 24 hours later, after infiltrating into Novodimitrivka, Russian rifle teams couch-surfed from one house to another, and then consolidated their presence in the northeastern part of the fortress city, namely along this street right here composed of countless small residential homes. In response, the Ukrainian command most likely dispatched reinforcements to counterattack on the eastern outskirts. And that's when, on the 28th of April, the Russian 77th Motor Rifle Regiment and the 10th Guards Tank Regiment unleashed hell and stormed Ivanivka. The capture of the settlement was confirmed by multiple flag raises across the urban area. In summary, for April, this is where Russian forces started, and this is the amount of ground they secured by the end of the month. The defense of Kostiantynivka depended on its western flank, but now the Russians had broken through. Stepanivka had fallen. Bereztok was under Russian control, and now the capture of Ivanivka positioned Russian forces a stone's throw away from the citadel. Yet despite the critical situation, on the 28th of April, various Ukrainian soldiers deployed in Kostiantynivka essentially told the Ukrainian media that everything was under control.
We are winning!
On the 1st of May, Ukraine's 8th Army Aviation Command bombarded Russian positions in this electric substation east of Kostiantynivka. It has a tactical importance because it's located right in between the woods and Novodimitrivka. But you know what? I'm surprised that there haven't been any geolocations of Russian soldiers along these two tree lines. Anyway, in response to the Ukrainian airstrikes, Russian aviation released massive loads on the high-rise district.
Oh shit, here we go again.
Multi-level apartment blocks are usually where the AFU packs its reserves. This means Russian recon drones detected troops going into certain buildings, and then those are the ones that get targeted. That being said, I think the troops hidden in the basements could survive even if the structure above collapses. So keep that in mind. 48 hours later, on the 3rd of May, the Russian 3rd Army attempted a big push across the road cutting through Kostiantynivka, but the operation was halted by drones from the 501st Marine Battalion. And as you've probably guessed, nowadays marksmanship skills and being able to shoot down enemy drones is a necessity to survive on the battlefield. Sometimes I wonder why not more soldiers are just given shotguns at this point. Instead of the Stalingrad, one man with a rifle and the other with ammunition, you could have binoms with one soldier armed with an AK and the other one with a shotgun, and they would essentially have to follow each other. The Ukrainian garrison didn't even have time to recover that the next day, Russian storm detachments departed Ivanivka, advanced 750 meters and secured a foothold west of the citadel. After watching these videos, there are two things that I noticed. First, that a lot of Ukrainian FPV drones operating above Kostiantynivka suffer from electronic warfare. That certainly means Russian troops install EW equipment once they capture a district. And the second, we saw a motorcycle. It's the first one I spotted in Kostiantynivka in a long time. This either means they're barely being used, or they're so effective that Ukrainian drone operators can't catch them. Especially considering how easy it is to hide motorbikes in urban areas. As Russian forces advanced into the western part of the fortress, the 109th Territorial Defense Brigade tried to stem the flow of enemy reinforcements by dropping as many TM-62 anti-tank mines as possible. That's also when Ukrainian drones kept pouring on Ivanivka, Bereztok, and Stepanivka. This one house was hit multiple times. Eventually, civilians came out with a Russian flag and held a sign demanding to be evacuated. While it's true that Russian infantrymen have to play hide-and-seek against flying IEDs, it's the same thing for Ukrainian riflemen sent as reinforcements into Kostiantynivka. In this one, this old Ukrainian soldier didn't even notice the fiber optics drone camping on the road. But luckily, the couple rounds he fired shot down the UAV. He probably had an aimbot. On the 7th of May, Russian storm detachments tried to push out these woods once and for all, in order to outflank this stubborn Ukrainian stronghold behind the main road. But once again, like waves crashing against rocks, they were welcomed by the 501st Marine Battalion.
Again!
The Russian command of the Third Army regrouped its forces, and in the meantime, D-30 howitzer batteries pummeled Novodmitrivka. By now you know what that means. It's the Russian version of foreplay. That's how a couple days later, surprise, surprise, a Russian DRG was spotted in Molocharka. What's interesting is that this was recorded by Ukraine's 24th Mechanized Brigade, the unit responsible for the defense of Chasiv Yar. So as you can see, if the Russians make gains in Kostiantynivka, it's going to affect the neighboring battle of Chasiv Yar. It's like a domino effect. And talking about that, from Molocharka, Russian forces could pivot to a settlement called Stinky, because then the Russians will push in the rear of the Ukrainian garrison positioned west of Chasiv Yar. And indeed, this will be a stinky situation. 24 hours later, more Russian sabotage teams had pushed through Ukrainian defenses. And Ukraine's 100th Mechanized Brigade quickly sent 2 kamikaze unmanned ground vehicles into this Vignette metallurgic factory. And you know what? UGVs are going to be the topic of my next video, so stay tuned. But yeah, by mid-May it seemed that the dam was breaking. Cracks were opening up left and right. Also on the 12th of May, Russian drone operators from the 13th Assault Detachment's Rusich detected a Ukrainian DRG in the southern outskirts of Kostiantynivka. It's not a coincidence that the next day, Ukrainian Su-27s carried airstrikes 500 meters from there. Oh yeah, so earlier I told you that these were greenhouses, but now that we actually have a footage, that's clearly not it. I don't know what it is, let me know in the comments if you know what those are. But the 17th of May, the Russian 8th Army started mopping up the area between Stepanivka and Ivanivka. Naturally, enemy drones came to the meetup. They even targeted this wounded Russian soldier waiting to be rescued on a stretcher. I'm telling you, the amount of things I have to go through to analyze this war is just... And the reality is that both sides do this sort of thing. 3 days later, night vision drones from the Ukrainian 156th Mechanized Brigade targeted 2 Russian soldiers as they crossed over an anti-tank ditch. The only thing I don't understand is that the high-rise building district can be seen behind them. So they moved from east to west, from Kostiantynivka towards Ivanivka. Maybe it was a rotation, not really sure. Or maybe it's simply 2 guys that were sent forward. They saw that they were getting detected by Ukrainian drones and they just decided to run back. The next day on the 21st of May, the 1465th Motor Rifle Regiment observed 2 Ukrainian soldiers dragging one of their wounded comrades on a stretcher. They take refuge into this apartment block, and knowing what was about to come, they made sure to barricade themselves in the basement. That's how, despite 6 drone strikes, the Russians couldn't get to them. And that's why nobody wears crosses to identify themselves as a medic. They would be the first ones targeted by the enemy drones. Japanese soldiers did the same thing during World War II. After Ukraine's debacle on the western flank, now it's the entire eastern flank that was collapsing. On the 18th of May, Russian units made progress in Novodmitrivka and continued to infiltrate into Molocharka. Some Ukrainian soldiers were sent forward to dislodge enemy patrols, but they were ambushed by Russian fiber optics drones. These days, even Ukrainian drone operators are not safe, as they can get targeted as well. As opposed to other sectors of the front, in Kostiantynivka, it's the Russians that benefit from drone supremacy. The 2 Ukrainian supply roads going into the fortress were constantly being harassed by Russian fiber optics drones. So much so that Ukrainian traffic along these 2 roads essentially stopped. Here's a Russian recon drone flying over Prospect Lomonosova Street along the Krivitariets River. There's not a single soul, nothing is moving. CNN also sent its correspondent, Nick Patton-Walsh, to Kostiantynivka. He witnessed firsthand how Ukrainian logistics had all but stopped. Along with his patrol, the journey that should take 15 minutes took them 5 hours because they were stopped 14 times by enemy drones buzzing above their heads. Actually, here's some part of the reportage.
A Russian drone above.
And you have to split out because the drone will try and target groups of individuals.
The next one is right on top of us.
There it is. There it is.
They were really lucky that nothing happened, because in this video from the same sector, an FPV drone fell a couple meters away from a Ukrainian rifle squad. It was a close call. Although nobody was KIA, the one recording said that he was a 300, meaning he was wounded. But the 22nd of May, more Russian riflemen advanced towards Molocharka, and to the surprise of the Ukrainian Rarog Unmanned Systems Brigade, some enemy patrols even managed to reach the very center of the fortress.
All hope is failing, my lord! The battle is almost done!
Many pro-Ukrainian pages were coping by saying it's just one guy. Yes, that's what your ex also said. On the 24th of May, Ukraine's 28th Mechanized Brigade targeted this building near the railway line with TM62 mines. The large warehouse was strategic because its location was in between this Russian sector and the citadel, and it could also be used as staging ground for Russian assault detachments. For months, it was a Ukrainian stronghold, but it seems under Russian control now. Once again, Ukrainian UAV pilots uploaded all the drone strikes from that day. Out of 22 strikes, I counted 5 fatalities. All the time, it's the same story they play with the editing, but many times I noticed that it's the same strike just from different angles, or rather double or even triple tapping the same Russian soldier, and often enemy soldiers that were already severely injured. About this topic, this Russian Telegram page reported, the proportion of wounded with bullet injuries upon admission to military hospitals accounts for no more than 5 to 10% of the total number of admissions. In all other cases, these are shrapnel and concussions resulting from the arrival of drones or missiles. That's a classic case of survivorship bias. These are the soldiers that survived and that are wounded, because bullets are used at close range. Let's be honest, in a close quarters encounter where both sides shoot each other with bullets, oftentimes one side eliminates the other. So the defeated side is either KIA or captured. So an interesting way to balance the info from this Russian Telegram post would be to see the injuries on enemy captured soldiers. My hypothesis is that a lot of them would have bullet or grenade wounds. Anyway, the next day on the 25th of May, Ukrainian artillery from the Fire Support Regiment Dnipro 1 unleashed an impressive artillery barrage south of Kostiantynivka. Do you see what I'm seeing right now? Here's a hint. Here's another one. Hint number 3. Okay, one last hint.
Yo!
That's right, they shelled Russian forces here, here, and here, all over the citadel, the high-rise district. Even Deep State had no other choice but to mark the area as part of the gray zone. According to them, the attack was led by tactical group Ivanivka, but we cannot forget that there are also Russian forces positioned in the Svinets industrial area in the center. Wherever they came from, Russia's control of part of the Komi district poses a great threat to the AFU, as Russian infantrymen can now entrench themselves there and accumulate a lot of reserves for further assaults. And at the same time, according to Rybar, the eastern part of the TO-504 road came under control of the 3rd Army. On the 26th, Russian forces claimed to have captured the entire part west of Prospect Lomonosova Street, with Russian sabotage teams in the industrial sector. The remaining Ukrainian troops only have a narrow path to escape from full encirclement. The Ukrainian command immediately dispatched a Leopard 1A5 up the main road for a rapid fire mission, but it was intercepted by a Russian drone. And according to the latest news, Russian aviation continued its relentless bombardment of the citadel, which at the same time indicated Ukrainian positions. Meanwhile, Russian storm detachments broke through in the center and linked up with friendly forces in the Svinets industrial area, thus trapping the remaining Ukrainian forces south of Kostiantynivka. So what can we expect next? So as a summary, this is the territory gained by the Russians in April, and then this is all the ground they captured in May. I think it's clear that the writing is on the wall. Unless the AFU launches an immediate counterattack, it's just a matter of time before Kostiantynivka falls, especially since the fortress's defenses have been broken through and are now fragmented into isolated islands. The Russian 3rd and 8th armies did a pretty good job at tag-teaming the Ukrainians in Kostiantynivka. There's also this video from the 25th, where we see Russian aviation bombarding these warehouses to the north. this can only mean one thing. This is a preparation for the next Russian assault. And if we zoom in to that sector, if Russian forces take hold of Yemelnyova Street, the remaining Ukrainian forces in Kostiantynivka will be effectively trapped and encircled. That's all I have for you today, and see you in the next one.